what mandates who or what or how we do that as a public water supplier is the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So they require us to test every 3 years. And you come up with a sample base. We don't test every home. We're required to have, at the beginning, we had to have so many samples, and if you, the maximum level for lead is 15 parts per billion. So if you take your samples within your system, and it's a sporadic sampling of the system, we don't get anywhere near all the houses or whatever. And keep in mind, we have limited knowledge of what's in houses in the 80s. We didn't have a standard building code inspections back then. The township adopted its building code, where it mandated inspections in the late 80s, start of the 1990s. So I don't have, plastic piping was used in many homes during that period. It was cheaper. So in many cases, particularly developments where one builder was building, they would spec out plastic pipe. So, but you have to go to people's homes so you find enough samples of these people, these homes that would have copper service lines within their structure, and in that time range, which would mean that they would be a candidate that there would be lead solder. Not all solder had lead. I mean, this is where it gets into very, unique situations. You're just trying to find a sample base that is acceptable to DEP. And I have to reiterate, we send that sample base to DEP, and then they accept those results, and we're required to test every 3 years. So as long as you're under 15 parts per billion, you do not have to do any other efforts. Now, I'm going to switch over to the LititzDailyNews system. The LititzDailyNews system does employ and has for the past 12 years, Carl, a corrosion inhibitor.
Correct.
I mean, they actually put a chemical treatment, again, that's been in their quality, and in our water quality report, that they put in a corrosion inhibitor, which is basically a chemical treatment to reduce that potential of leaching. And again, they take, because they're a bigger system, and I'm comparing the LititzDailyNews system to the Rossville system, they take more samples than what the Rossville system does. But, I think it's good that people pay attention. I mean, we send out these water quality reports. I don't ever get a question on the water quality reports. I think it's positive. People are looking at that and taking an interest in what's going on, but need to make sure you're getting information that puts it in comparison. I mean, the Flint, Michigan situation is much different than and I'm not sure what all the rules in the state of Michigan are versus, it is a federal mandate, but every environmental regulation for the state, I think, would implement that a little bit differently. But, I know what we have to comply with within the state of Pennsylvania. So, again, we will be testing again this year in 2016, and because our last test result was in 2013 and now 2010. And we'll take a look again at our sample base. I mean, we're always searching for candidates. I mean, we can't force people to take samples. It's on a volunteer basis. A lot of people don't want to do it because they got to get up. I mean, there's a certain criteria. You got to draw the water a certain way. You have to fill out the forms. We get rejected, when we make, again, we just go through a series till we find candidate housing, and then take the samples. If we had a situation where the results was higher, then we would take more samples, but that's not been the case. And we report, again, I believe the highest rate reading in 2013 in the Rossville system was one house at 11 parts per billion, under the 15 parts, and the rest were lower than that. So we do report that in our quality control report, and then that property, each of those people who participate in the sample are given their test results. And it's a little bit like radon. I mean, radon occurs, and you need to be aware of that, and you may need to take precautionary measures and to mitigate that potential or to reduce that potential. It's the same way with even lead. I mean, we have running your water for a little bit in the morning so you don't take the first draft, and that, there's just certain little things you can do to, if people are concerned, or test the water themselves, absolutely. Or they can call us and we can look and see whether they could be a candidate. And again, we're not going to test everybody. We're required to take so many samples. But I think it's just an educational process. I mean, I think it's healthy that people are paying attention to it. It's something that they should pay attention to. I mean, your water quality is very important. And, you know, I think the last time this really came up as a big issue was the copper situation in DC about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. It seems to go through a cycle. You know, now there's a lot of attention being brought on by the Flint, Michigan situation. But like I said, in their case, they had lead, you know, water mains, a somewhat different scenario there. But it could be anywhere. There's no doubt about that. You need to take, you know, you want to be kept aware of what's going on, and look at our water quality report. And if people have questions, they should call and we'll try to answer that. But you know, we are putting some additional information out since there seems to be a higher level of interest on this, and put it on our website. And again, we'll be making up our 2016 sample base. We'll submit that to DEP. I would imagine there's going to be a review, since there seems to be more scrutiny on the situation, that DEP may issue new guidelines. That they do, will incorporate those new guidelines. The sample has to be taken between June and September of this year. And then the same thing, the results have to be sent to the property owners, and then also that those results would be, for this year's water quality report, Steve, would we have the new test samples in?
No, they would go on next year.
They would go on next year, yeah, for the 2017 water quality report.
Water quality reports for last year's testing.
Yeah. So, I wanted, you know, just bring the board up to speed on that, about, you know, what was happening. I think we've had a total of 3 calls. But like I said, I think it's good that people are paying attention. I think that's healthy. I think that's something, you shouldn't take it for granted. Like every consumer, you should be aware of what's going on. But there is a lot of effort to put out information. I mean, the one thing, the one thing is the state allowed us, we normally mailed out that water quality report, and then was it 2 years or last year, that we were allowed to just put it on the website. I think if there's, you know, that interest, we want to mail those results out to every customer. You know, there's a mailing cost, and I think that's why the state said, well, you could do it on your website to try to save money. But I think if there's this level of interest, I think it's good for us to get that information in our consumers' hands and let them have that information, and provide as much information as we can. I think that's just healthy for us to do that. Any questions from the board?
Is DEP looking at anything, any changes?
We don't. I think, like I said, I think they might. We've gotten no information from them. We did communicate with them to say, you know, if they do have changes, you know, they would bring that out in order. But you know, that would have to occur before June, before the testing, sample testing has to take place. But you have up to 90 days to actually complete the testing. I think to the end of September.
Right. June to September.
So
Very good.
that's all I have.
Thank you.